This is the story of Miles Carter, a boy denied entry into a gifted program because of the color of his skin, an injustice that lit a fire he would never put out. But Miles' journey is not just about exclusion, it's about what he outran. Through relentless brilliance, defiant innovation, and unbreakable will, Miles grows into a revolutionary tech founder who doesn't just challenge the system, he rewrites it. His story is a high-stakes, emotionally charged fight against institutional racism, but it's also an exhilarating blueprint for liberation, legacy, and what happens when a child refused a seat at the table builds a movement the world can't ignore. If you liked the video and subscribe to the channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. Fall 2006, Dayton, Ohio. The walls in room 104 were covered in faded bulletin boards with laminated quotes like, "Believe in yourself," and "You can do hard things." But none of them mattered to 9-year-old Miles Carter as he stood outside the door, holding his mother's hand and watching the other children settle into their desks. Mrs. Rollins, the school's assistant principal, leaned down with the kind of smile adults give when they're trying to explain something cruel in a nice way. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter, but the gifted development track is full for now. We've had to make tough calls." Cassandra Carter clenched her jaw. "So every seat's taken?" "I'm afraid so." Miles watched through the glass window. The desks weren't full. One in the back sat empty, pencil untouched, chair neatly pushed in. "He tested in the 99th percentile, Cassandra said quietly. "He reads at a 10th grade level. He's doing algebra. You said he needed to qualify." "He did." Mrs. Rollins's face didn't change. "These programs are holistic. We take multiple factors into account." Cassandra's eyes narrowed. "And one of those factors is that he's the only black child applying?" Mrs. Rollins' smile thinned. "I think this conversation is over." Miles didn't cry. Not then. He just stared at that empty chair while his mother squeezed his hand and turned him down the hallway. Her heels echoed like gunshots against the tile floor. He followed silently, taking it all in, Mrs. Rollins's smirk, the flicker of the fluorescent lights, the thick smell of bleach and old textbooks. He didn't understand everything yet, but he understood enough. Later that night, while Cassandra worked her second job cleaning offices downtown, Miles sat in their cramped apartment's kitchen, headphones on, listening to a podcast about inventors. He scribbled diagrams in a composition notebook. His favorite was Lonnie Johnson, the black NASA engineer who created the Super Soaker. It wasn't just the invention. It was that he'd done it despite everyone telling him no. Miles flipped to a fresh page and started sketching. Not toys. Not rockets. Ideas. He titled the page, "Things They Can't Deny Me." Over the next few years, the denial in room 104 became legend in the Carter household. Cassandra wouldn't speak the name of the school again. She pulled Miles from the district and homeschooled him after hours using borrowed curriculum from a friend who taught at a private academy. Miles didn't mind. He devoured books on logic, tech, behavioral economics, and design thinking. He competed in math leagues under fake school names. He built a rudimentary facial recognition app using a cracked version of MATLAB on a dying laptop from Goodwill. By 13, he was running an anonymous blog called Dark Circuit where he reverse-engineered popular apps and explained how they worked in plain English. It gained a cult following among teens and coders. He wasn't just smart, he was strategic. And angry. He'd never forgotten the empty chair. Summer 2013, Columbus Tech Fest. Miles wore a hoodie and oversized glasses as he stood behind his table, demoing his latest project. A smart budgeting tool powered by AI that could predict impulsive spending behavior based on phone usage patterns. A venture capitalist from Cleveland, Ethan Bragg, paused long enough to watch it run. "This yours?" Bragg asked. Miles nodded. "You built this backend yourself?" "From scratch." Bragg narrowed his eyes. "You in college?" "I'm 16. Bragg whistled. "You got a team?" Miles shook his head. "Just me. And my mom when she's not working." Bragg slipped him a card. "Call me when you're ready to scale. No pressure." By the time he turned 17, Miles incorporated his first company, Talon, a personal finance AI app tailored for underserved communities. His algorithm could flag predatory lending offers, suggest smarter bill pay cycles, and even generate scripts for difficult financial phone calls. It went viral on Black Twitter after a user posted a screenshot showing how Talon saved her $400 in overdraft fees in 1 month. Downloads spiked. Local banks started asking for partnerships. And suddenly, the boy who was once denied a chair in room 104 was fielding interview requests from Forbes and Wired. One journalist asked if he ever felt bitter. Miles laughed, soft and bitter. I used to think I wanted a seat at their table. Now I want to build my own building. But with attention came pressure. Lawsuits, copycats, skeptics, rumors that he was too young, that he was a puppet for older investors, that he couldn't possibly be the brains behind Talon. And the more Miles succeeded, the more dangerous the silence from his past became. He began to wonder, if the system had failed him once, who was to say it wouldn't try again, this time harder? Because power never leaves quietly. And they weren't done trying to push him out. Spring 2015, Cleveland, Ohio. By 17, Miles Carter had an office. Not a corner suite, just a rented room above a shuttered dry cleaner with second-hand furniture and spotty Wi-Fi. But it was his. Talon, his personal finance app, had just hit 200,000 downloads, and small banks were lining up to license his predictive debt tools. What they didn't say out loud, but what Miles knew too well, was that none of them expected him to be the one behind it. At a fintech panel hosted by the Greater Cleveland Economic Coalition, Miles stood backstage with 3 other founders. All white. All older. They nodded politely at him like he was someone's intern. One leaned in. You with Bragg's team? I'm Miles. Talon's founder. The man blinked, then smiled like someone trying to hide a bad taste. Good for you. Minutes later on stage the moderator read his bio, and mispronounced his name. Twice. Then referred to him as a youth coder, instead of a CEO. The others were introduced with phrases like innovator, visionary, serial entrepreneur. When the Q&A started, a woman from the audience raised her hand. What measures, she asked, is your app taking to ensure it doesn't enable fraud in low-income areas? Miles paused. Talon was built for low-income areas. Our fraud detection rate is higher than most national tools, because we understand what financial predators actually look like. The woman frowned. I just worry some users might not know how to use it correctly. He wanted to say, you mean black users. You mean people like me. Instead, he smiled and answered the question with data. Again. The racism wasn't always overt. That was the trick. At one pitch meeting, a white investor asked to speak to the technical lead, not realizing Miles was the only developer. At another, a reporter suggested Miles use a stock image of a white founder for his press kit, to appeal more broadly. Even Bragg, the investor who backed him early, wasn't immune. You're brilliant, kid, Bragg said one night over drinks. But you've got to learn how to neutralize your presence. Be less sharp in meetings. Less reactive. Makes people nervous. Miles stared at him. You want me to code $1 million product but act like I don't know what I'm doing? I want you to win, Bragg replied. And sometimes you've got to dress the part before they let you in. When Forbes called Miles a teenage phenom disrupting finance, the comment section burned. He's not even in college. This is just diversity PR. Bet someone else wrote the code. Affirmative action tech fairy tale. He tried not to read them. Cassandra, now working just one job thanks to his income, read every one. She printed out the worst and taped them to the back of a closet door. Let it fuel you, she told him. This is what they do when they can't stop you. But Miles wasn't made of steel. He was 17. And every slight, every double take, every invitation to prove himself again, and again, cut a little deeper. He began changing how he spoke in meetings. Clipped his tone. Smiled more. Let Bragg take over calls with older white investors. It worked. Talon raised another round of funding. A national bank offered a partnership. His face started appearing on panels and pitch decks, but always at the edge, never center. One night, after a feature on CNBC, a white executive from a major fintech firm approached him at a conference. You're sharp, the man said. Really sharp. But I've got to be honest, if you were 35 white and had an MBA, you'd be worth 10 times what you are now. Miles replied without blinking. If I were 35 white and had an MBA, I wouldn't have had to build Talon in the first place. The man laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. At home, in the same kitchen where he once scribbled notes as a child, Miles sat with Cassandra going over contracts. He didn't say much. He rarely did anymore. "You're tired?" she said. "They still don't see me," he answered. She reached across the table. "You're not building this so they will. You're building it so they can't ignore you." He looked at her, then at the copy of the Talon logo burned into the corner of his laptop. And for the first time in weeks he allowed himself to believe she might be right. Winter 2016 in New York City. The first snowfall dusted Manhattan like powdered glass. From the 24th floor of a WeWork building in Soho, Miles Carter watched the flakes collect on the ledges of billion-dollar towers. He leaned against the window, one hand gripping a USB drive, the other resting on the edge of a laptop humming with lines of code that could change his life, or burn it down. Talon was no longer just an app. It was an ecosystem. A proprietary AI system for tracking, forecasting, and neutralizing debt traps in real time, especially in Black and brown communities. It had uncovered patterns banks didn't want public. It had disrupted loan structures built on silence and confusion. It had begun to show people in raw data exactly who was stealing from them. And that made Miles a threat. A week earlier he'd received the email. Subject: Urgent, Acquisition Discussion. From Jason Kullman, Horizon Banking Group. Kullman wasn't just anyone. He ran one of the largest financial data networks in the country. And he wanted to buy Talon outright, for $42 million. There were no congrats in the message. No compliments on the code, the impact, or the innovation. Just an offer, a deadline, and a legal threat beneath the surface. "Accept by Friday," Bragg had said, practically glowing. "This is the dream. You're 17. You'll be a millionaire before you can vote." But Miles wasn't dreaming. He was calculating. Because he'd read the fine print. If he sold, Horizon wouldn't just own his code. They'd bury it. He'd seen it happen before. Companies buying promising tools, then shelving them to protect profit margins. If Talon disappeared, nothing would take its place. The people who relied on it, families avoiding payday lenders, students escaping overdraft spirals, single parents learning to save, would be left exposed. The racism Miles faced had never been about slurs or shouts. It had been policy, architecture. And now they were trying to build walls around his creation, brick by quiet brick. Bragg invited him to a private dinner at a rooftop lounge near Madison Square Park. "Let's toast," he said, waving at a bottle of champagne already on the table. Miles didn't sit. "What's in it for Horizon?" he asked. Bragg shrugged. "You. The brand. The goodwill. They want a story." "No," Miles said. "They want me gone." Bragg laughed like he'd misunderstood. "You'll be set for life. You can build something new. This is how the game works." "That's the problem," Miles replied. "It's always a game to you. But when I lose, people bleed." Bragg's smile flickered. "You're being dramatic." Miles stared him down. "You're being bought." Back in his Airbnb, Miles pulled up Talon's usage map. Tiny blue lights pulsed across the screen, each one a user. Each one a choice to fight back. He thought about his mom. About room 104. About that empty chair that had followed him for nearly a decade like a ghost with paperwork. He didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be undeniable. By Friday morning, a revised offer arrived, $50 million with a seat on the board. Miles stared at the number. It was generational wealth. It was security. It was freedom. But it wasn't ownership. It wasn't power. He clicked reply and typed 4 words. "Talon is not for sale." Then he pressed send. The fallout was immediate. First came the smear articles. Claims that Talon used unauthorized data collection. Anonymous sources questioning the integrity of Miles's code. A fake Twitter thread alleging he'd stolen the core algorithm from a white classmate who helped him once in high school. Then came the threat letters. Cease and desist. IP audits. Notices from app stores demanding documentation for security compliance. A key partnership with a mid-sized bank collapsed overnight. Cassandra called him in tears. "Tell me you're okay," she said. "I'm not," he answered, "but I'm still here." He and 2 trusted engineers pulled 48-hour shifts rebuilding their back-end infrastructure. They rewrote core processes, encrypted key user segments, and prepared for the possibility that Talon would be removed from app stores. When it happened, on a cold Tuesday morning in late January, Miles was ready. They launched a web-based version within 12 hours. Open source backup tools for users within 24. A press kit with proof of every audit, every clean code report, every testimonial. But what mattered most was the video. He filmed it alone. No script. Just him. Black hoodie. No branding. My name is Miles Carter. When I was 9, a school told me I didn't belong in a gifted program. They didn't say it outright. But I knew. I knew what that silence meant. I built Talon so no one else would be tricked into believing they were the problem. And now some people want to take it. Not because it's broken, but because it works. So let me be clear. Talon is staying. We are not done. The video hit 4.3 million views in 2 days. Spring 2016, Washington, D.C. They called it the Emerging Leaders in Tech Summit, an invitation-only gathering in the marble halls of the Cannon House office building, just steps from the U.S. Capitol. Miles Carter, now 18, stood alone at the refreshment table, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup while older, whiter founders passed around business cards and laughs like currency. He'd been invited last minute by a junior staffer from the House Committee on Financial Services. "We need more youth voices," she'd said, "especially from communities affected by financial exclusion." What she meant was, we need a black face on the flyer. From the moment he walked in, the air shifted. A white panelist paused mid-conversation when Miles introduced himself. Another asked if he was one of the interns. A journalist from a major outlet turned to him and said, "It's great to see diversity here. Whose team are you on?" Miles had learned not to flinch. He smiled. "I lead Talon. We're one of the fastest-growing financial AI platforms for underserved communities." "Oh," the reporter said, blinking. "So you're like, the spokesperson?" "I wrote the code. I built the models. I managed the data compliance. So, no. I'm the founder." Her eyebrows twitched, then she scribbled something in her notebook without meeting his eyes again. On stage, the moderators fumbled through his introduction. While the other founders had LinkedIn-polished bios, Miles got a 2-sentence summary that called him a young developer disrupting low-income finance. They left out the app's 1.1 million users. They left out the community grants funded directly from his own pocket. They left out the fact that he'd turned down $50 million from Horizon Banking Group. "Tell us about your background," the moderator asked. "How did you get here?" Miles leveled his gaze at the man. "I got denied a seat in a gifted program when I was 9 because I was black and from the wrong zip code. So I built something no one could gatekeep." There was a pause. A murmur. An uncomfortable cough. The moderator shifted. "Right. And how are you addressing financial illiteracy in communities that may not be ready for this level of tech?" There it was. That careful, sterilized racism dressed as curiosity. They weren't ready. They couldn't possibly understand. "I built Talon with literacy in mind. Plain language prompts, AI that explains terms, tools that teach people while they use them," Miles said coolly. "If they're not ready, why are we seeing triple retention rates in black neighborhoods?" A few heads nodded. But some didn't like it. He knew that look, white-knuckled discomfort behind expensive smiles. After the panel, he was approached by a man in a sharp gray suit. Gerald Keyes, Special Counsel for Digital Policy, Federal Reserve Liaison. "I've been following your rise," Keyes said. "You've got a hell of a product. And a voice people are noticing." "Appreciate that," Miles replied. "You should consider partnering with someone more seasoned," Keyes said. "Your vision's strong. But at this level, credibility is everything. Appearance still matters." Miles didn't blink. "I've been told that before." "I'm sure you have," Keyes said with a faint smile. "But you want to keep moving up, don't you? The doors at this level don't open unless someone already inside vouches for you." That night, he returned to his DC hotel and found a note slid under his door. "We admire what you've built. We can help it last. You're not the first to walk this path. You just don't have to walk it alone. GK." He stared at it for a long time, then crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. A week later, things began to shift. Subtly at first. Talon's traffic from major mobile carriers slowed. Miles traced it. An algorithm update deprioritized his app in certain app store searches. Then came news that a top financial influencer who'd promoted Talon for free had been offered a 6-figure deal by a competitor if she pulled her endorsement. Her apology was long. Her withdrawal was swift. Then came the coincidences. Talon was flagged for an audit by a state board Miles had never interacted with. A cybersecurity watchdog falsely accused the app of data scraping, charges he debunked in public, but the headline still stuck. The word unregulated appeared in 3 articles that week. Another investor backed out of a community loan program with a single email. Not convinced Carter can scale without internal conflict. Internal conflict? He was the whole damn company. The racism didn't look like burning crosses or slurs. It looked like erasure. It looked like access quietly revoked. It looked like awards he wasn't nominated for, panels he wasn't invited back to, grants that went to white-led startups copying features Talon had released a year earlier. He received a Google alert about a new AI budgeting tool for urban households. It had the same interface, same icons. The founders were 2 white Stanford grads who gave interviews about financial empathy. Their funding was 6 times what Talon had raised. Miles emailed their PR team. He got no response. At a tech conference in Austin, a white CEO stood on stage and proudly presented their breakthrough algorithm for spotting predatory lending. It was Talon's core system. Copied. Modified. Stripped of its ethics and mission. Miles stood in the back of the hall, arms crossed, jaw tight. The applause was thunderous. He felt like he was watching his own reflection perform without him. Afterward, he confronted the presenter. "You're welcome," Miles said, handing the man a printout of a GitHub commit dated 8 months earlier. The CEO glanced at it, then shrugged. "It's tech, man. Everybody borrows. Maybe you should have filed a patent." Miles returned home to Ohio that month and sat on the same couch he'd once fallen asleep on while learning JavaScript. Cassandra brought him a cup of tea and didn't say anything until he did. "They're trying to kill it," he said finally. "Not just the app. The idea. That someone like me could build something and keep it." She took his hand. "Then don't give it to them." That night, Miles called a meeting with his small but loyal team, 4 engineers, 2 designers, all young, all people of color. "I want to rebuild Talon from the inside out," he said. "Open source part of it. Make the algorithm public. Let them try and co-opt that. And we push out a next-gen version that no one can bury." "You want to give the code away?" one asked. "No," he said. "I want to make it unkillable." Summer 2016 Detroit, Michigan. The warehouse smelled like rust and ozone. Miles Carter stood beneath a tangle of exposed pipes and flickering LEDs, watching as one of his engineers fired up the prototype of Talon Black, the new open-source fork of his financial intelligence system. Around him, a small group of coders and civic organizers gathered in a circle. Young, fierce, black, brown, undocumented. They weren't investors. They weren't there for equity or stock options. They were there because they'd been burned by the same machine. Talon Black wasn't a product. It was a message. And Miles was done asking for permission. 3 months earlier, he turned down another buyout, this one from a VC-backed fintech firm that offered him $70 million, a board seat, and full press support if he walked away and left all current infrastructure to their discretion. He'd laughed before hanging up. That same week, he bought the abandoned warehouse in Detroit for $28,000 in cash. 2 floors. No plumbing. Collapsing roof. But it was quiet, anonymous, and ready to be transformed. With Cassandra's blessing, and her life savings from the first Talon round, Miles gutted it, rewired it, and brought in fold-out tables, laptops, whiteboards, cots, and a 24-hour kettle station. No suits. No press. Just war. They worked in shifts, writing code by day and sleeping in sleeping bags by night. They weren't just rebuilding Talon. They were breaking it down into modular components that any neighborhood group, activist collective, or independent developer could run without corporate permission. No user data ever touched the cloud. All analytics were device local. The entire engine ran off decentralized verification, like a blockchain but leaner, faster, and impossible to corrupt from the top. One of the coders, Lizette, was a refugee from a collapsed microloan app that had been quietly absorbed by a multinational bank. She ran encryption. Another, Darnell, once worked for a tech firm that sold payday lending models to hedge funds. He handled counter-surveillance. They called themselves the Control-Z team, because they were here to undo what had been done. In early June, the test version of Talon Black rolled out to 5 cities: Detroit, Baltimore, Oakland, Birmingham, and South Chicago. No ads. No marketing. Just QR codes passed hand to hand, printed on stickers slapped to bus stops, laundromats, and barbershop mirrors. The downloads exploded. Users began reporting that the app helped them renegotiate medical debt, flag hidden interest fees, and auto-generate legal letters to challenge illegal foreclosures. A grandmother in Baltimore used it to get her utilities restored. A single dad in Birmingham used it to get a payday lender shut down. And through it all, the app never asked for a name. No profiles. No tracking. Just power. By July, Miles got the call he'd been waiting for. "This is a national security issue," said Assistant U.S. Attorney Elaine Bryant, voice clipped, no pleasantries. "We've traced some of your nodes to municipal servers. If your system interferes with regulated banking infrastructure." Miles cut her off. "My system corrects what yours overlooks. You don't have legal clearance to operate like this." "I don't need clearance. I have receipts." The next day, Talon Black source code was posted to GitHub under a new name, ProofOfLife. The license? Open source, unrestricted. It couldn't be bought. Couldn't be killed. Couldn't be slowed down by review boards or acquisition threats. In the README file, Miles left a note. "When I was 9, a school told me I didn't belong. So I built my own system. If you're reading this, you don't need to wait for permission either." Media outlets started calling. This time they weren't offering praise, they wanted explanations. Why had Miles gone rogue? Was he enabling anarchist financial networks? Was Talon Black being used to fund illegal activity? They ignored the testimonials from users. Ignored the documentation, the audits, the open bug tracker with public accountability. Instead, the headlines came sharp. Teen hacker or financial vigilante? Miles Carter's dangerous crusade. Unregulated app sparks chaos in urban banking. And then came the real blow. The IRS launched an audit. It was surgical. His accounts were frozen, pending review. His mother's bank flagged her deposits. His team's payroll hit delays. Even his scholarship offer, deferred while he built Talon, was rescinded by the university due to questions regarding ongoing legal matters. Cassandra stood in the kitchen with the envelope in her hand. "They think if they starve you, you'll come crawling," she said quietly. Miles looked at her. "I don't crawl," he said. "I replicate." He returned to Detroit with fire in his veins. "I want to decentralize the update process," he told Control-Z. "Each node gets its own patching protocol. That way, if they knock one of us offline, 20 others go live." "You sure?" Darnell asked. "That means we lose the ability to track. No kill switch. No reset." Miles nodded. "Let it grow wild." By August, ProofOfLife was live in 37 cities. Hundreds of copies existed independently, on burner phones, donated tablets, community Wi-Fi drives. Developers in Ghana and Brazil were translating the UI. A coalition in Chicago began integrating it into their housing justice work. Public defenders requested permission to use it in court evidence, proving clients had been steered into unaffordable debt traps. And still no one could find Miles. Because Miles didn't exist on paper anymore. No LLC. No fixed address. No public-facing identity. Just a legend moving through the system like a fault line. That month, while visiting a community center in Oakland, he watched a group of teenagers using ProofOfLife to teach budgeting classes to newly arrived migrants. One of the girls turned to him and said, "You look like the guy in the news." Miles just smiled. "I get that a lot." Outside, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, he sat on the curb with a burner phone and opened the global activity map. Every dot was a user. Every dot was a refusal. Proof not just of survival, but of resistance. He closed his eyes and let the silence stretch around him. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Fall 2016 Atlanta, Georgia. The knock on the door came at 3:17 a.m. Miles Carter jolted upright from the couch inside the safe house, a one-bedroom rental with blackout curtains and noise insulation, nestled between a bail bond office and a closed-down diner on Edgewood Avenue. 3 sharp knocks. Then silence. Not police. They'd bang harder. Not friends. They'd call first. He crossed the floor quietly, barefoot, phone in one hand, USB drive in the other. When he cracked the door, he saw Lizette standing in the alley, face pale, chest heaving. "They raided the Detroit hub," she said. "Everyone's okay. But Darnell's been detained." Miles didn't speak. They didn't even bother with warrants. Just stormed in, said it was part of an anti-terror operation. They took laptops, drives, router logs. Miles clenched his jaw. And the local node? Wiped clean. But it's a message. By morning, #FreeDarnell was trending. His arrest was framed as a precautionary cybercrime investigation, but every detail leaked to the press made it sound like he was running an international laundering ring. A U.S. senator went on CNN and said, apps like ProofOfLife operate in a legal gray zone, and some are being weaponized by foreign actors to disrupt American financial institutions. They showed B-roll footage of a man in a hoodie. Not Darnell. Not even Miles. Just a blurry stock photo of a black teen with a backpack, looking vaguely criminal. The racism had moved from quiet exclusion to full-blown targeting. The narrative wasn't that ProofOfLife was dangerous because it exposed predatory lending. It was dangerous because it was uncontrolled. Because it was black-led. Because it dared to empower people they preferred to manage. They couldn't kill the app. So now they were trying to kill the story. Miles called a private meeting in a rented co-working space near Decatur. Just 3 people. Lizette, a civil rights attorney named Jameer Caldwell, and Grace Okafor, a Nigerian-born developer who'd been running one of the most successful decentralized talon forks in Lagos. They're building a legal cage around us, Jameer said. I've seen this before. You won't win in court because the case isn't about guilt, it's about freezing you long enough to break momentum. What do we do? Grace asked. Stay underground forever? Miles stared at the wall. The projector behind him glowed with a simple slide. What if we stop hiding? Lizette blinked. You want to go public? I want to take ProofOfLife mainstream. They stared at him like he'd lost his mind. He laid it out, a national tour. Not through tech hubs, but through communities. No press, no panels. Just meetups in rec centers, barbershops, church basements. Teach people how to run local ProofOfLife nodes themselves. No centralized funding. No figurehead. Decentralized organizing? Jameer said. Like the original SNCC movement. Exactly, Miles said. The civil rights playbook, with code. They were silent a moment. Then Grace smiled. Let's go. The Code the Block tour began in late October. No sponsorships. No live streams. No hashtags. Just 12 cities, 6 laptops, and one goal: train people to be their own firewall. In Memphis, a group of formerly incarcerated men used ProofOfLife to prove that payday lenders were targeting parolees with misleading repayment contracts. In New Orleans, 2 teenage girls used it to track late fee patterns in their apartment complex, then filed a class action lawsuit. In Houston, a youth collective created a Spanish-language fork with built-in voice assistance for elderly users. Miles spoke at each stop, but only briefly. The real stars were the users. The community coders. The activists. He'd learned his lesson. The more visible he became, the easier he was to target. So now he spread the light. But visibility has a cost. By the 3rd week of the tour, Miles received word from a trusted friend inside a federal agency. He was being quietly investigated under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. They're not looking to prosecute yet, the friend said. But they're circling. Waiting for a mistake. If they catch you on the wrong server, even one line of code could get twisted. He hung up the call and stood in the parking lot of a public library in Phoenix, Arizona, staring up at the sky. He could run. Disappear again. Go deeper underground. Rebuild from another country. Let the movement live without him. But something had shifted on this tour. People weren't just using ProofOfLife. They were depending on it. At a stop in El Paso, an older woman approached him after a training session. She walked with a cane and wore a talon shirt that was at least 5 years old. You saved my son, she said. The app stopped him from signing a loan that would have put him back in jail. Miles thanked her. Tried to move on. She stopped him with a hand on his arm. Don't let them make you feel alone, she said. You're not. In December, Miles made his boldest move yet. He partnered with a group of grassroots organizers to release ProofOfLife OS, a lightweight, install-anywhere operating system designed for use on recycled computers, library machines, and community kiosks. No internet required. Fully offline functionality. Encrypted tools for budgeting, legal templates, resource mapping, and debt defense. He launched it not at CES or South by Southwest, but at a block party in Jackson, Mississippi. No stage. Just folding chairs, fried catfish, and local kids helping neighbors install it on ancient Dell machines. Within a week, 70,000 downloads. The next week, a subpoena. It arrived at Cassandra's door. Miles hadn't used her address in 2 years. But they found it anyway. She called him that night, voice shaking. They came asking about where you live. About your banking records. Miles, baby, they looked me in the face and said the words aiding and abetting. He sat still, holding the burner phone to his ear. They want to break you through me, she said. Miles closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. Don't be, she said fiercely. Just finish what you started. Later that night, he walked to a payphone in downtown Jackson. Dialed a number he hadn't used in months. When the voice on the other end picked up, he said, It's time. You sure? Yes. I'll make the arrangements, the voice replied. No going back after this. There was never going to be. The next morning, the Freedom Stack went live. A collection of open-source civic tools bundled with ProofOfLife OS, tenant defense bots, protest rights generators, autofill disability forms, fake name generators, facial recognition blockers, and emergency network darkmail. It spread like wildfire. The headlines couldn't keep up, but the agencies did. And the walls were closing in. Winter 2017, unknown location US. The safe house had no address, no router, no windows. Just reinforced walls, a solar battery bank, and a chemical toilet. Miles Carter had been living there for 17 days, surviving off dry rations, canned beans, and silence. He didn't turn on lights at night. He didn't check messages. The burner phone stayed off, battery pulled. His only visitor was a courier who dropped encrypted drives through a chute in the back wall every other day. Updates from the outside. Day 5. Darnell released, charges dropped, insufficient evidence. Day 9. Cassandra Carter subpoenaed again, she refused to testify. Day 13. A digital watchdog site posted a dossier claiming ProofOfLife OS was connected to foreign anti-capitalist operatives. Day 16. The GitHub page vanished. No warning. No explanation. On day 17 he stopped sleeping. There was a name for what they were doing. Silence protocol. It wasn't a law. It was a process. First, discredit the subject. Frame them as unstable, erratic, extreme. Second, disrupt their communications. Remove access to code, servers, collaborators. Third, cut off their legal protections. No bank, no university, no court will touch you. Fourth, quietly suggest that the subject may pose a threat to national integrity. Fifth, wait. Most subjects break down, flee, or disappear. What they hadn't accounted for was Miles. Because he hadn't just built software. He built fail-safes. At 3:41 a.m. on day 18, the courier dropped a package with no data drive. Just a sealed envelope with a note. They're preparing a federal indictment. 3 counts. Unlicensed financial engineering. Cyber trespass. Distribution of unregistered digital infrastructure. They're waiting until media focus dies down. It's coordinated. Time to make a move. He read the note twice. Then again. Then burned it. He stared at the cement ceiling for 2 more hours before sliding on his hoodie and boots. The backup drive was already in his bag. The USB key around his neck. He walked out without looking back. Miles didn't run. He walked straight into Atlanta. 30 hours later, he emerged from an underground makerspace with a new identity, Eli Hughes, an IT consultant. Clean license. Neutral accent. No known affiliations. Then he booked a meeting under that name with Channel 6 News, a regional station known for old-school journalism and low national visibility. That was the plan. Be seen but not too seen. When the anchor sat down across from him in the studio's bare interview room, she looked confused. You're the guy from... I'm nobody, he said. I just have something people need to hear. The segment aired 2 days later. A 7-minute interview shot in tight framing. Miles never gave his name. Never confirmed anything. But he spoke plainly. They don't want to destroy ProofOfLife because it's illegal. They want to destroy it because it works. Because it exposes what they've spent decades hiding in fine print and broken systems. Because it puts tools in the hands of people who were never supposed to have them. The clip went viral, quietly. It didn't make national headlines. It didn't trend on Twitter. But on Telegram, Signal, and Darknet forums, it spread like a beacon. And the people moved. In St. Louis, a housing co-op used ProofOfLife OS to block 37 illegal evictions. In East LA, undocumented workers used it to coordinate mutual aid without risking ICE tracking. In rural Alabama, a group of black farmers used the financial modules to crowdsource legal funds after being denied USDA loans. And in DC, something strange happened. 2 junior congressional aides leaked a redacted memo titled, Uncontrolled Financial Distribution Networks, Urgent Risk Assessment. ProofOfLife was listed as a Level 2 digital insurgency, the same classification as ransomware groups. Miles read the memo at a train station, huddled between a vending machine and a flickering departure board. He laughed. They couldn't beat him, so they branded him a virus. That same week, an anonymous donation of $100,000 hit a public wallet linked to the Control-Z team. Attached was a single message: keep the light on. Some of us are inside the machine. But the walls kept closing in. On January 12th, Cassandra's identity was frozen. Her accounts locked. She was placed on a monitoring list by her employer, who claimed she posed a reputational risk. That night, Miles broke his own rule and called her. She answered on the second ring. "They're circling me," she said softly. "I know. You gotta stop this, baby." He didn't speak. "I'm proud of you. But I can't watch you burn." Miles closed his eyes. "I'm not stopping," he said. "But I'll protect you. I promise." She didn't say goodbye. She just hung up. The next morning he triggered Protocol M4, his last resort architecture. It wiped all personal ID from the ProofOfLife codebase, removed signatures, scrambled the origin trail, desynced all known leadership references from update packages. Within 72 hours, the app could update itself anonymously across every system in the network. It no longer needed him. He built it that way. He always knew it would end like this. He walked out of the cafe and dropped his phone into a sewer grate. 3 hours later, the indictment went public. U.S. v. Miles Carter filed in federal court. Charges included operating an unlicensed financial system, aiding in unauthorized distribution of encrypted software, willful obstruction of digital compliance orders. The penalties? Up to 45 years in prison. A CNN anchor asked, why would a brilliant young man praised as a tech prodigy throw it all away? They aired stock photos of him. One from TechFest. One from a school directory. A third, most recent, was pixelated, blurry, likely scraped from a meetup poster. None of them showed the boy Cassandra had raised. The boy who watched them close the door to room 104. The boy who never stopped building. That same night, while his name flooded news feeds, the Freedom Stack 2.0 dropped. Hundreds of nodes activated a new update: stealth payment pathways, community banking simulators, and localized organizing tools, built by people he'd never met. ProofOfLife wasn't his anymore. It was everyone's. And it was alive. Spring 2017, Dayton, Ohio. It began the way most revolutions do, not with fire but with a letter. Hand-delivered. No sender. Just a plain envelope addressed to Principal, Emerson Elementary School, Dayton, Ohio. Inside was a note. 17 years ago, I stood outside room 104 and watched my future get erased. You said there were no seats left. So I made my own. You may not remember me, but I remember everything. Attached was a check, $500,000, to fund a new tech lab, STEM scholarships for students of color, and a partnership with a local community coding organization. In the memo line, one word: reparations. The donation sparked local headlines. Anonymous alum makes largest gift in school history. New STEM wing to be named for Miles Carter. The principal, a new hire who had no idea about the past, posed for cameras and smiled brightly. Cassandra Carter, quiet, still proud, stood at the back of the crowd, arms folded, not saying a word. She knew. Miles wasn't there. He hadn't been seen in public in months. Not since the federal indictment. Not since the Freedom Stack update. Not since the world had stopped asking where he was, and started asking what he'd left behind. Summer 2017, the internet. ProofOfLife fractured like light through a prism. In South Africa, it became Imbokodo, a mobile platform helping domestic workers organize for collective bargaining. In Brazil, it was cicatriz used to track financial redlining in favelas. In Palestine, it was Daraba, protecting people from eviction by automatically flagging unlawful demolitions. In Chicago, it ran from a corner store server room, powering mutual aid maps and tenant strike logistics. In Atlanta, it kept bail fund operations fluid and invisible. In Oakland, it was built into a free library's public computers, camouflaged behind spreadsheets. No leaders. No servers. No center. Just a growing ecosystem of defiance. And then, on a rainy afternoon in August, a press release. From the Office of the United States Attorney. After careful review of the facts surrounding U.S. v. Miles Carter, the Department of Justice is withdrawing all charges, citing insufficient evidence, procedural concerns and evolving precedents in the realm of digital civil infrastructure. They couldn't find him. They couldn't kill the app. They couldn't win the narrative. So they folded quietly. As they always do. 2 weeks later, Lizette received a postcard from Istanbul. Read. Still watching. Still building. Fall 2018, Tulsa, Oklahoma. A group of high schoolers launched Blackstack, an offshoot of ProofOfLife designed to teach financial independence and digital literacy in underserved schools. They ran it out of an abandoned church using solar panels and donated hardware. On the wall above the entrance they painted a mural. It wasn't of Miles Carter. No portraits. No quotes. Just a single image, an empty school chair surrounded by blueprints, wires and books, set on fire mid-transformation into a launch pad. Underneath, what they deny us we redesign. Winter 2020, somewhere quiet. A man in his early 20s walked into a community hall in Detroit, head low, hoodie up. He didn't say his name. He just asked if he could help. They handed him a laptop, a folding chair, and a packet of notes about the latest software patch. He spent 3 hours debugging code, fixing a memory leak, and helping a kid get their grandma's water turned back on using an automated letter generator. When he left, one of the volunteers asked, "You knew?" He nodded. Just passing through. But one of them, an older woman with sharp eyes, watched him for a long time after he left. And smiled. Spring 2022, National Archives, Washington, D.C. A new exhibit opened under the banner, Systems of Resistance, Black Tech and the Fight for Autonomy. The first room was filled with artifacts. Old flip phones, cracked laptops, QR stickers from the Code the Block tour. The second room? A simulation. ProofOfLife OS, rebuilt for visitors to navigate. Case studies, simulations, real-time decision trees for fighting eviction, predatory lending, legal suppression. Teenagers walked out shaken. Inspired. Older visitors cried. At the back of the exhibit was a glass case. Inside, a worn composition notebook. Cover faded. Title scrawled in thick Sharpie. Things they can't take from me. Miles Carter, age 9. No. He's not on magazine covers. He's not giving TED Talks. He doesn't tweet. He doesn't accept awards. Because Miles Carter was never trying to be seen. He was trying to be felt. In every unlocked door. In every untraceable tool. In every child who's told you don't belong and still finds a way to win. He became something bigger than a founder. He became a template. They closed the door on room 104. He built a whole system they couldn't shut down. And now, wherever someone refuses to be erased, wherever they sit down with nothing but fury, fire, and code, that's where he lives. In the space between no and enough. In every chair that no one can take. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.